with Senator Espoudon, basically getting some information about the RFI and RFP and calendar days or business days, and that an amendment would be proffered by the senator. So, Senator
Thank you, Madam
Espoudon,
Speaker.
you're recognized.
Yes, we were addressing the scheduled days, and the question was whether we're talking calendar or business days. And the reply from GITA officials was that it would be business days. So I would like to proffer an amendment on page 5, line 17, which reads, provide for a 15-day question period, comma, and insert the words Saturday, Sunday, and government of Guam holidays accepted, and then continue on, commencing from the date of publication. And the reason for that is, Madam Speaker, there is no real definition in law of what a business day or a calendar day is. And also the argument can be made that there are instrumentalities, much like GMH in this instance, that doesn't have a 5-day workday. And in fact, that was brought up by one of our colleagues. There are businesses that have 6-day work days and whatnot, 6-day business days. So just to be very clear, after period, the word period, comma, it'll be Saturdays, Sundays, and government of Guam holidays accepted, EXCEPTED, and then continuing on.
Okay. All right. So is everybody able to follow along?
And that was just to clarify the number of days that anybody who has the submission, so that the timeline won't be contested.
Okay. So on the amendment, no objections? So ordered. Senator, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I believe that same wording should be provided on item number 3 on line 20. Provide a 30-day period, Saturdays, Sundays, and government of Guam holidays accepted after the close of the question period for submissions.
Okay, so for line 20 as well, the same language?
Yes, Madam
No
Speaker.
objection? So ordered.
And then during the recess, Madam Speaker, there was a discussion about the role of GITA in terms of the analysis and compilation of this request for information. And GITA admitted that they don't have the capacity to do the analysis. And really their role would be to compile all this information and submit it. So on page 5, line 23, if we could delete the words analysis and.
Okay, so on the amendment on page 5, line 23, to delete the words analysis and then the whole sentence will start with compilation. Any objections? None, so ordered.
Right. And then if we go to page 6, Madam Speaker, again we come up to, I'll look to the body for this one. Basically, this is the time frame in which GITA has to submit the compilations to the governor and the legislature. No more than 30 days. That might be fine to read as it is. I mean, but I'll look for direction down the road. However, as you end that on line 3, it says after the receipt of proposals. Again, we talked about that this is a request for information, not a request for proposals. So after the receipt of information.
Okay. On the amendment then to delete proposals and to be replaced with information.
Yes,
no
ma'am.
objection? Senator Tomata, any question or comments or?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, just as on page 5, line 23, we struck out the word analysis because GITA stated that they didn't have really the expertise to go through these submittals and make the proper analysis. But on page 6, then what we say is that, okay, so then just compile it and send it to the governor and to the legislature. So, and then what?
Yes. So who would you like to address that question to? Is there anyone who feels comfortable enough to answer the question? Well, it is because, okay. You're right. I understand that. Thank you, Senator. The part of the information first, could we just decide whether it's to delete proposals and then to replace it with information? And then we can go into the discussion, which you, Senator, I guess, with the compilation on page 5, and then with the language on page 6, which talks about compilation and results, and then the bigger question is, and then what? So we can have that conversation right after we take care of this amendment. Is that okay?
Yes,
All right,
ma'am.
so then there's no objection to proposals to be replaced with information. No objections? So ordered. Thank you. So, Senator, I know, maybe, Senator, I would like to ask you instead, since you made the amendment with the deletion of analysis and, and in terms of how that relates to maybe Section 4, or you want me to...
Madam Speaker, if I may, I think the proper thing, since I believe that the good senator's question is very pertinent to a lot of different things here, that if I could yield my time right now, but reserve the right to come back and speak after you address that issue, because I think it is. I mean, once we come up with the information, then what?
Yeah. Either that, or else would the author like to, the sponsor, maybe just talk about this, and then, Senator, you still hold the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Rodriguez?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Well, Madam Speaker, the whole intent and purpose, as we've said in the opening of this the opening of this bill, that the whole purpose is to go out there, seek information that may be out there to help us in determining what's the next course of action to take. We said the RFI, the request for information process, is really part of a future action, a future RFP, if we do decide to move in that direction. And so, we can do nothing with the information. We can, get the information and do nothing with it, or we could use information to see how we're going to move in the direction of the hospital. And now with the amendment that you have put on this bill, move in the direction, how are we going to now further our intent and our desire to expand health insurance coverage, within our community and also within the region.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Senator Spauldon, then you have the floor. You still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, going back now to the bill as in its present form, I guess I just want to say, and again, there was a lot of discussion earlier about some of the concerns that our colleagues had with this. I too, again, am very cautious in my approach to this, because it seems to be this would be a very substantive policy call. And if you just take a look at the title, this is really a movement towards trying to figure out what interested contractor or hospital management team or operator, how they would transition the GMH into a public-private partnership. There were concerns, and again, that itself is a policy call. Is that really where we're going with this? And I'm not really sure that we've had a really good discussion within the community whether that's where we're going to go. We're depending upon, again, what's contained in this bill, and to kind of say, yeah, that's the way we're going to go. But we've never had a real good discussion about that outside of this session hall. Even in the amendment that you proffered, Madam Speaker, to kind of really try to understand the healthcare issues, not only of our region, but not only our island, but the region as well. Again, it seems to imply that there is a need to look at the greater picture of healthcare on the island, as opposed to just the public-private partnership creation with GMH. And so I do have concerns with that. Within the legislative findings and intent, it makes a point that when the government of Guam took over the old hospital, even at its inception, there was a $9 million deficit from the very beginning, and that it's continued on since then. I mean, that situation has continued on since then, and now it's reached $20 million. However, and I was just thinking about this earlier, it's like, well, then really, when you take the value of the dollar back then and compare it to what it is now, you're right, the thing is right, we're still in the same place. However, my thinking, it may not be so much where there are major deficiencies in the operations or management of it, and because that's what the intent says. because, again, I think now it speaks to the priorities that we place in terms of our budgetary priorities and the spending priorities that the administration has in terms of support for the hospital. So, again, if we know, and in fact, even in testimony, there was only one or two people, I think there was only one person who was at the public hearing on this, and that was the liaison from the governor's office to the legislature, former Senator Chris Duenas, who basically said, yes, you know, historically, they've looked, and their team has looking at the facts and the history of GMH, and they have noticed that, yes, over a cycle of 2 to 3 years, that debt that GMH always seems to have always comes around, and it always usually averages around that $20 to $30 million range. And so I think, again, knowing that, it would seem to me that then maybe it behooves us as a legislature to really plan along those lines when we start addressing the budget for the hospital. And I know that there are a lot of areas in the government that need funding. However, again, when we start talking about the hospital, and if it really is to that critical level, who's to say that we couldn't adjust the budget to reflect that we are very aware that within a 2 to 3 year cycle, we are going to come into a shortfall of anywhere in the ballpark of $20 million. And maybe there's got to be maybe there's a solution in there as well. And so, going back to the point, again, because I believe this is, even though it seems a very innocuous bill, just a request for information on how we're going to transform ourselves into a public-private hospital, we haven't had a discussion yet if that is exactly what this body wants to do. And so I have some concern there. Again, one of the areas that it was talked about earlier as well, Madam Speaker, is that the information that's going to come in, one of these is one of the discussions or the information that we're soliciting is how can a private for-profit or non-profit firm come in and take over the GMH in its entirety, or how can it come in and transfer limited management and operation to these private operators and so forth. And again, I'm not really sure that we as a policy-making body, or even as an island, or even in consultation with the governor, who has the Organic Act authority over all of health care on the island, whether we've actually sat down with him and the island to really try to understand where do we really want to go. To present it in this manner, I understand it seems like it's again, just a real simple, innocent, let's request for information, but the point has been made. With all the requirements that we're asking for anybody who submits information according to the RFI, that would encompass, I think, a great undertaking on their part in terms of financial resources that they have to use to be able to address the situations that we're asking them to address. And there is a discomfort by a colleague or two, or maybe more, about the whole process. That is the question, it wasn't really put out there, but it was, right? The question then is this RFI process the precursor to an RFP? And if it is, are those entities who supply information on how they might be able, and what their ideas would be to help the hospital situation, are they or are they not precluded from participating in RFP? Because it would seem to me that an RFI with that kind of information, and then an RFP that follows based upon that information, would almost be unsolicited proposal of some degree. And with that, because I have promised a colleague who has already spoken and had forgotten to submit an amendment, and he has asked me to submit an amendment, I will now submit it under my name, but on his behalf. And that would be on page 4, line 20. After the word service, then the new words will be, and I'll have this copied. I just got this right now. And the amendment would be, no participants in this RFI process shall be eligible to participate in any subsequent or related request for proposal or invitation for bid related to the purposes of this act, to include subsidiaries or companies which have similar shareholders, officers or directors or immediate family members thereof. I know it's a long one, Madam Speaker, and like I said, I just received it. If I may just take a minute to have it copied.
We'll take a recess and to have
Thank
copies
you, Madam
made.
Speaker.
Okay, all right.
Because he's not here.
Got Senator Underwood excited about that.
The legislature is back in session. Senator, you still have the floor.
Madam Speaker, thank you. After a little bit of discussion with our colleagues on the floor, I will elect not to proffer the amendment at this time. However, if I may close on the time that I do have, again, I have stated my reservations. I have stated my concurrence with a lot of the arguments and concerns that were addressed by previous speakers. And I guess in parting that I don't know how many, 9 plus 4, all the requirements that are supposed to be in the RFI in total seem like more areas that should be addressed in a feasibility study on behalf of the government, as opposed to having private contractors coming in and speaking to that issue and almost dictating, or at least kind of leading us to where they want to be, because in their minds that would be the place to go. Because even on page 3 under line 21, let me just read the whole thing starting on line 18. The GITA shall develop and publish a request for information for the purpose of soliciting and determining public interest and the desired direction public policymakers should take. Again, whether that request for information really is going to be the guide of the policy that we should take, I think is a little too overbearing. And so one last amendment, Madam Speaker, on line 21, page 3, I would like to replace the word after public policymakers should to the word may.
One moment, again, on page 3.
Page 3, line 21, Madam Speaker.
Line 21 instead of should take?
Yes.
To change it to?
To may.
To may.
Otherwise, it sounds like that once the information comes in, that is the desired direction, the policy that we should take, as opposed to what we may take.
Okay, on the amendment, no objections? So order. Thank
With that,
you,
Madam
Senator.
Speaker, I'm anxious to hear what other colleagues have to say on this bill. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome, Senator. On the list, I have Senator Frank Blas, Senator Morrison, and the Vice Speaker. So, Senator Blas? Oh, he's not here.
I can speak on his behalf.
Senator Morrison?
I'll yield this time to Senator Adams.
I would hold his spot until he returns, but I have Senator. Which one, Senator Tamara? No, I have, because I had him, he spoke before Espo Don.
Oh, no, but I'll yield for my colleague not here.
Okay, Senator Morrison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the concerns being shared here regarding Bill 277. And Madam Speaker, I've been part of a process or RFI process, and I really believe that the RFI process has been really underutilized by this government. And I think when we're dealing with the hospital, I think it's a great tool or a great first step to use, knowing what's out there, or not knowing what's out there, that can basically allow this body to seek and understand, digest, and see how we can move forward. There may be obviously more cost-effective solutions out there to how to proceed with this, with our hospital. Well, Madam Speaker, we've been talking about RFI, we've been talking about RFPs, and you know, we had the GITA administrator in here to give us a little understanding of how they work with this process. But I've been on a small scale through the RFI process, and I believe that if administrators or our government starts to use this process, I think we'll make more prudent decisions going forward, more cost-effective solutions going forward, as we've seen with some of these major projects that we have done, finding out later that we need to throw more money at them. So I really believe the RFI is a great first step to seeing where we can go with this hospital. We already know from history that we cannot continue to keep that continuous throwing of funds to the hospital is not solving the overall long-term solution to where we want to go with this hospital. There's great items that have been built into Bill 277. I also thank you, Madam Speaker, for also including some other items in there to provide more opportunity to seek more information through the RFI. I'm certain that we would, we don't know where we might move with the RFP process. I believe that will be will come very much later and more of a formal or legal structure, how we want to proceed and how we want to either proceed to a public-private partnership. But who knows, Madam Speaker, through the RFI and how it comes about that maybe there may be some vendors that are out there that have ways of looking at this in the industry, that have expertise and already know, maybe I'm sure they have already have templates built that they know where to go to fix this hospital or provide solutions to this hospital. So I stand in full support of Bill 277. I thank the author for putting out this idea of an RFI, as knowing that as participating in this RFA process there's a lot of expertise in our government, Madam Speaker, of maybe not completely of having that skill to analyze the complete picture, but I'm sure they have the ability to at least assess this information coming in and providing or formulating through this information how we can proceed with this information. So, thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, main motion, Mr. Vice Speaker?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I support the idea of trying to figure out a way to improve the efficiency and the operation of the hospital. And so this process is as good as any that has been proffered in the past, and I would like to see us attempt to do everything that we can to assist. I only raised my hand. I wasn't going to speak on the bill, but I only raised my hand when there was talk about how much the deficit was at the hospital on an annual basis. And if one looks at the legislative intent, it doesn't look bad. I mean, you know, it's like walking up and thinking that the person that you're eyeing is healthy and wealthy, and then come to find out that he or she is ridden with all kinds of malignancies, one of which, and I asked at the public hearing that we be honest about what the obligations of the hospital are. The deficit of $25 million is nothing. That's just current vendors. This legislature has approved, I'm not sure, in excess of $25 million worth of loans, and you're thinking about increasing the loans that are currently out. So, but it's just that number. It's still going up. But the biggest obligation that the hospital has is an ongoing mortgage, a unfunded liability to the retirement fund. And I thought that if we were going to be putting statistics and facts out on the legislative intent, that I really do think that we should be as transparent as possible and make whoever is going to be talking about what they're going to do with the hospital understand that taking on the hospital means that they have to, in any way or fashion, have to figure out how to be able to fund the unfunded liability of the retirement fund as it relates to the hospital. The retirees with the most six-figure pensions are from the hospital. And the hospital is going to need to continue to fund that and their retirees. And I think whoever is going to look at the hospital has to realize that that beautiful person comes with a huge mortgage. And but I'm not going to put the amount down, or I just thought that it should be there, but it's neither here nor there as it relates to this bill, because the RFI is the important part, and that the legislative intent, we're not really bound to it. But at some point, when we do talk to people, they have to understand that you have to try to figure out what you're going to do with 1,200 employees, and more importantly for me right now is what you're going to do to make sure that the retirees of the hospital continue to get their retirement check after whatever happens to the hospital happens.
I've exhausted the list of those who want to speak, unless there's somebody else who has a burning desire to speak who have not spoken before. First of all, those who have not spoken and would like an opportunity to speak. Okay, Senator McCready.
No, I just haven't spoken. I don't want to speak.
Oh, okay.
Sorry?
Senator Torres, you're recognized.
He's using his time to me.
Use my time.
I have Senator Torres I've recognized for now, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We've heard a lot of discussion and very, very logical thought processes and concerns about this bill, but I rise in support of it because I think that fundamentally we do need to take action and take action that is outside of the box. You know, we've had decades of progress, decades of setbacks, and we're at a position now where, notwithstanding, not too long ago, we were celebrating the accreditation of our hospital after 25 years. You know, so it's possible to put things in place and have things get better. But, you know, we also recognize right now that we're at a critical point where our hospital could collapse if things aren't done differently. And that the solutions, although we've had experts in and out and very dedicated people trying to understand the process, there's still something out there that perhaps is a solution towards a permanent and sustainable fix to the hospital. So I do rise in support of this. I think that not taking those sorts of steps and the risks, we don't know what's going to come out of this, but to not take the risk of at least trying, you'll never know. You'll never know what your options are. And I think that in any problem-solving situation, we must first have alternatives. You know, we know what the problems are, but we have to identify alternatives. And if they're not so obvious to us, perhaps they're a little more apparent to somebody else who has gone through a similar situation somewhere else. So I rise in support of this, and I urge my colleagues, sometimes we just have to take the risk. And if it doesn't pan out, so be it, but we can't kick ourselves for not trying.
You're welcome, Senator. So we don't have anybody else, and I do know that the second co-sponsor would like to speak, so I will recognize you then. You have the privilege as the second co-sponsor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to bring to the attention of the body the fact that the question that I had raised earlier, on page 5, we took the action to delete the words requiring GITA to do an analysis of all these submissions. And that then what's going to happen is they're going to prepare this request for information, they're going to disseminate it, and then when they bring it, all they do is they put it in binders and they send it down to us, and we do with it whatever. And I would suggest, I would like to make a motion for the body to reconsider its actions in deleting on page 5, line 23, the analysis. And I say that simply because if GITA has the capacity to put together this request for information, it should at least have the capacity to be able, and maybe not in-house, then maybe try and form a group made up of people from GMH or whatever to go over these submissions and do some kind of analysis and then write up their findings and their recommendation. And I think what we're looking at with these information submissions, it really requires more of a business analysis. We're not talking about, I don't think we're expecting anything so highly technical that GITA could not do, or GITA in collaboration with people from GMH couldn't do. So I would move that we reconsider our actions and leave that requirement in there on page 5, line 23, requiring GITA to perform an analysis. Let's see. They shall adhere to the following schedule. Analysis and compilation by GITA by the submissions by respondents. So I think that's important. Otherwise, it's kind of like when we just leave it to everybody's business, then it becomes nobody's business. So that's my motion, Madam Speaker. Yes.
I think we need to take a recess. The legislature is back in session. Senator Ada, on your amendment.
Madam Speaker, I'll just withdraw the amendment.
Okay, no objections to the withdrawal, so ordered. And Senator Blas, I know you've indicated you wanted to speak, so I'm giving you the opportunity. Oh. Oh. Okay, so is there anybody else who did not have an opportunity to speak and would like to speak? Senator Rodriguez, then, would you like to close?
Good afternoon again, Hafaday, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to close on this, and I want to thank our colleagues for the discussion on this. I think it's a very, very good and healthy discussion we've had the past 2 days. I want to thank the co-sponsors for sticking, because no one had a motion to withdraw their name. So I want to thank them for remaining co-sponsors, and actually want to also include yourself as a co-sponsor to this. So that's the first motion.
Okay, so on that motion, no objections, ordered.
I understand. I understand where the concerns so some of our colleagues have brought up. It's understandable when you take a look at what we're trying to address here. This is decades of challenges that our public hospital has experienced, and when you take when you take a path that is not the usual path, it's a different approach, then of course you're going to have people kind of having that sense of uneasiness, like we've had here with some of our colleagues. But I want to just reiterate that this first step that we're doing here is we're not saying we're going to privatize our hospital tomorrow. We're not entering into a public-private partnership next week. This is a process. I mean, we've taken decades to really come to and explore a different approach. So I think we need to take our time, and this is really the logical step the logical step forward in getting to where we all want for our hospital, which is a hospital that is sustainable, that is able to service our people, that is a choice, that our people, not just those that unfortunately don't have access to health insurance, is not just a place for them. That's not the only choice for them. We want to ensure that the delivery of health care is the best health care that's delivered in that public hospital. And so, I thank again our colleagues for the discussion. I ask all my colleagues for their support in moving this one step forward. One of the issues I wanted to address specifically is that one of our colleagues had talked about, well, what we're asking here, you're not going to have anybody come and respond. He specifically said on the amendment that you had proffered, Madam Speaker, to look at our MIP program, our MIP and Medicaid program. You've said it here on the floor when you made the amendment that there are interests out there to take a look at what we have and perhaps how we can improve it. And so we get the same, individuals and groups saying, look, if you want to be able to effectively run that program, here are some recommendations. Here, this is how we can do it. And so now with this RFI process, it really, it telegraphs to these people, now put your money where your mouth is. Because a lot of times, and I'm sure you, other colleagues here, have gotten calls and groups and people saying, we can take care of this. We can, resolve this problem. But now with this process, it ensures that it is a transparent process, that when they submit their information that we're seeking, that the community, us as policymakers, know what is out there, and it will give us the opportunity to work toward that next step of ensuring that we move in a direction where our hospital is sustainable and is viable for our people. So again, Madam Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you very much to our colleagues.
You're welcome, Senator. So on the motion to send 277 to the third reading without any objections, so ordered. Thank you, Senators. Bill number 175. Senator Rodriguez, you're also recognized for 175.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill
275. I'm so sorry. 275.
275-33 as substituted by the committee on third reading.
Okay. You may proceed, Senator. Wait, so that is, wait, I just want to really make sure that it's as substituted, right? Let me see. Okay, as substituted. Okay, Senator, you may proceed.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what this bill is about, it attempts to do several things. One is to amend the current statute that gives the Guam Fishermen's Cooperative Association up to the end of this month, which is today, to be able to utilize funds that were derived from the hot bond to be able to build the Guam Fishermen's Cooperative Association facility. And so we want to ensure that the association still has the ability to use and access these funds beyond March 31st, 2016. And so that's one of the aspects of this bill, is to extend that for another year. The second aspect of this, Madam Speaker, is that it now gives specific authorization and direction to GITA to be able to reprogram the sum of $1 million from the available unused allocation of the hot bond proceeds to be able to assist the Guam Fishermen's Cooperative Association in completing the dock facility and shoreline reinforcement economic enhancement project, which is the shoreline that really needs to be done in order for the construction and completion of the facility. We know that the whole project was going to cost about $6 million. The association was able to secure, of course, the $2 million, which is in a trust fund, and the other is what the other portions what the association is going to be seeking and obtaining through financing. This $1 million is our investment into ensuring that the shoreline is constructed and up to par, so that the facility, when it is built, it can service and do what its intended purposes is. And so that's what this bill is about, Madam Speaker, and ask our colleagues to please support this measure. Thank you.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, Senator Tom Eda, you're recognized.
If the author would yield, has in fact it been confirmed, verified that there is $1 million available that's unused?
Senator, do you yield to the question?
Yes, Madam Speaker, and yes, there is, and I'll explain how and why. The law right now for the hot bond only really has two amounts that are set by law, which is, I believe, the museum, which is, I believe, $27 million, and the other amount, I don't know what the exact amount is, lists down all the other projects that must be completed. And there was allocations made for all these specific projects. One of the projects that we know that right now is not moving forward completely is the Tumon flood mitigation project. There was $11 million that was allocated and set aside for that project. We have completed phase 1. They're in phase 2, and right now we're still in phase 3. GITA is still assessing and analyzing how to proceed on phase 3. And we know, though, that based on the reports of the consultants, that any other option other than the Gravity Bay outlet, which was the option to pump out storm water into Tumon Bay, is off the table. All the other options, Madam Speaker, range anywhere from $7 or $6 million up to $27 million. And I believe that this body, at least majority of this body, made it clear that that option of diverting stormwater to Tumon Bay was off, should be off the table, and so we supported that effort, which the GITA board had actually took off. After phase 1 and phase 2, from that 11 million, we were told by GITA there was about $2 to $3 million left in that for the allocation for the Tumon flood project. If you look at whatever option that is on the table now, it's anywhere between 6 to 27 million. You know that there's going to be a need to come back here and make a determination of if we're going to use any of those options, we're going to have to find additional money to make it happen. Right now, they're in the process of looking at other options. There was an option of perhaps directing stormwater from the Fujita pump station up to Marine Drive and then diverting it down to, I believe, I don't know if it's a sinkhole down in somewhere in Tamuning. They haven't come back to us yet with that final assessment. They're also doing a cost-benefit analysis in determining if indeed the flooding problem that occurs in Tumon, is it as bad as we believe it is, that it's something that needs to be done, something needs to be done on phase 3, because if phase 3 is to occur, we need to also ensure that we analyze the impacts, any time of construction, any interruption that this will cause the businesses down in Tumon, the businesses in the area where it will be most affected. And so GITA is doing that cost-benefit analysis at this time as well. And so we see an opportunity here, Madam Speaker, that we know that there's funds available for that project, that is just sitting and waiting. And so the direction with this bill is to use $1 million that from those funds to go into this project where number one, there's a threat of it not moving forward. They haven't moved forward. The date, which expires today, so we're moving that, and so with that $1 million, we believe that this is a proper and good way, best use of that money at this point to ensure that the Guam Fishermen's Cooperative moves forward with their plan.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Tom Atta, hope he was able to respond to your question then.
Well, yeah, now I understand that basically because the original mitigation project that was identified and was priced out for the flood mitigation, that it was, finally concluded that we're not, with the funds that's available, at least that mitigation action will not be feasible given the amount of money that be available, and that the solution is going to take more money. And so it seems that what we're doing is, because the amount of money that's left will not be enough to fund, a mitigation project, then let's just kick it completely out of the field and let's go use the money elsewhere. And so I do have a problem with that. So but the other bigger problem that I have is that these were monies that were set aside. It comes from the hotel occupancy tax that's generated for the purpose of nurturing our tourism industry. And we know from a hearing that we had about a month ago that the GVB, one of the GVB committees, identified that there's been a backlog of about $4 million worth of safety-related projects that they haven't been able to fund. And so it would seem that, if we're not going to be able to use these hotel occupancy tax funds for the mitigation work, then let's use it for the safety-related projects down in Tumon. We often talk about, tourism is the engine, one of the engines of our economy and all that, and all we need is I don't know if we fully recovered from that, whatchamacallit, the running over of the tourists in front of Hard Rock Cafe. But there's a lot of safety-related projects down there. Now, are those projects any less important than this boardwalk that we're talking about? It just seems, here we go again, taking money that was intended for basically the development of our hotel industry down there. Now, it's not, so I do have some serious concerns with this particular proposal. Thank you.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, Senator Frank Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when you look at the legislation and you recognize that what we're doing is amending existing statute so that we can expand the utilization of the available funding to be able to complete a worthwhile project. I tend to look at the legislation a little bit closer and to question some of the things that we would like to be able to amend or strike out or add to make this fit. And I guess one of the very first flags that comes up for me is actually on page 1. And if the author could yield to a question, and the question being, why are we striking out on line 1, page 8, Gita, and making it very specific, that we can't, the funds can't be used to pay any contracted consultants. What's the reasoning behind this? And that's the question that I have.
Senator, do
Thank you.
yield?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, well, the existing law now gave the responsibility to the Guam Fishermen's Cooperative Association to handle the project, and it excluded GITA's involvement in the project. And so what we're doing here now, and in consultation with the fishermen's, with the co-op, is that we're going to get GITA on board with them now to be able to move this forward. And so that's, at the end of the day, the existing language that whatever expenditures are going to be made from this fund, from the funds that we have here, that the co-op still must have the final determination to be able to make any expenses. What we're still holding and making perfectly clear is that no consultants shall be involved or paid in this project moving forward.
So along those lines, Madam Speaker, and I guess another question I'd like to be able to pose is then, does then this now say that GITA will not fit in the category of consultant, but how do they fit in this whole scheme? Are they now managing this project, or they're going to take over this? Because even if you look at if the money was provided to the Fishermen's Co-op to be able to do this, obviously there has to be some agreement, and I would assume contractual, to GITA to consult on this. And if that be the case, striking their name out, but then putting the word any, is a double negative.
Okay, Senator, do you yield?
Yes. Can you repeat the question?
Oh,
Specific-
again, is what then is the role now of Gita in this project? Because that role will define, again, what they are. And for the purposes of basic contractual law and stuff, that could basically make them a consultant, and if they're consultant, then addition of the word any.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So what this does now is just remove the prohibition of Gita's involvement. We're not saying, Gita, you're involved now. As I said earlier, that the co-op would still will have to make that determination. We're just removing the prohibition that Gita be involved in this, and so whatever agreement still has to be made between the co-op and Gita.
Senator Blas?
Thank you for the answer, but I don't think it answered the question. Let me move on. I think there's a whole statement that's missing when you go from page 1 to page 2, because if you look at line 10 and 11 on page 1, then you go to line 1 and page 2, and you continue on with what the statement is or what is being said on page 2, doesn't fit. The Guam Economic Development Authority, in coordination with the Guam Fishermen's Cooperative Association, shall ensure, notwithstanding the order of priority requirement in section 1515 I-2, and upon enactment, the sum of $2 million of the proceeds are authorized, appropriated, and shall be deposited and accounted for in a separate trustee. Mr. Chair, if you look at the continuation, you're going to have to read it this way. It doesn't make sense. Though what I gather from this, if in fact this is what it reads, is that we're giving Gita the power to authorize and appropriate money. So, unless I'm reading this wrong.
Why don't we just take a few minutes and please.
Yeah.
Senator Blas, do I understand we have a resolution?
Yes, we do, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much for that timeout. First off, with regards to my first concern, you know, talking about double negatives and double positives, polarizing points and whatnot, and talking with the author, he agrees with me. Very simply is on page 1, line 9, is just remove the word any. You know, when you're looking at the context of the statement, when you say don't pay any don't pay contract.
What line on page?
Page 1, line 9.
And that was in addition, so we're going to strike that now?
Just the word any.
Any objection?
You know, and then along those lines, Mr. Speaker, I just need to be able to inform and I remember the conversation and discussion this body had in length with regards to that payment. I just need to, as a result of this, GIRA is going to take a fee. The GIRA is going to take a portion of this. Okay? And that's what we're authorizing. That said, I want to go ahead and move to, so that there's clarity in what is necessary in page 2 with regards to the extension of the date for the authorization to use the money. It's really unnecessary on page 1, lines 10 and 11 to be there. So my motion is to strike out on page 1 all of line 10 and 11.
On the amendment to strike out lines 10 and 11, any senator wish to be heard? Any objection?
So along those lines, Mr. Speaker, my third amendment to this is then on page 2, line 1, it is a notwithstanding with uppercase.
Okay.
Because that is the start of the sentence.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any other senator wish to be heard on the main motion? On the main motion, any senator wish to be heard? If not, Senator Rodriguez, you're invited to close.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you again to our colleagues for discussion on this bill. Just to address one of the issues that was brought up earlier, Mr. Speaker, this project of the Guam Fishermen's Co-op is a tourism-related project. There was statements made that this perhaps is not a tourism-related project. The inclusion of the $2 million that we've set aside for the facility is a testament to that this is a tourism-related, and so all we're doing here is being able to move around the funds as it's needed. And so again, I want to thank our colleagues and ask to please support this so that the co-op can move forward in this long-awaited project. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the motion to place Bill 275 in the voting file, any objection? Senator Underwood? On your Bill 279.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to make a motion to place Bill 279-33 in the third reading file, and I also would appreciate the opportunity to speak on it.
Is it as introduced or
as substituted? Bill 279-33 as substituted by the Committee on Rules, by the committee.
Any objection to the motion to place Bill 279 as substituted? You're recognized to speak.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Bill 279-33, as substituted by the committee, seeks to extend voter eligibility in the primary and further clarify the Guam election code. I believe we can all agree that exercising the right to vote is a habit that we need to encourage. Our democracy can be made more resilient and more accountable to the people through early and sustained civic participation. Bill 279-33 falls in line with our prioritizing first-generation initiatives, which is central to my mission as a public servant. Beginning at a young age, our students are taught in social studies, civics classes, government classes, about the importance of being able to vote, and that this civic duty, when exercised, produces results. As high school students, these young adults become more exposed to government and public service, and their ideas develop through meaningful action. I have had the opportunity to hear from some of our young adults, their teachers and community leaders, who agree that participation in voting early on fosters a sense of ownership and accountability at a critical time. We want to foster this and ensure this so that they can see for themselves that their choices do make a difference. There are three things that are critical to remember as we consider Bill 279-33. The first is that we are not changing the voting age in the general election. The age to vote in the general election will remain 18. We are merely authorizing the 17-year-olds who will be 18 by the general election to vote for the candidates that will be on the final ballot. The second point is that Guam can join 21 other states, plus our nation's capital, in extending voting eligibility with this bill. And the last but not least is that this bill has received broad support from the Guam Election Commission, and of course both aisles of our legislature and many of constituents who will be impacted by this bill. Additionally, today, the committee chair and I visited Simon Sanchez High School, where they held a voter registration drive for eligible youth. We'll also be collecting the final testimony from students like these in favor of this bill as this bill moves forward toward final consideration. I hope that we can all unite on this bill in the interest of empowering our constituents. We should avoid the scenario of states like Washington, Hawaii, Wyoming, where only one political party extends their voting population by allowing 17-year-olds to vote in primaries. We're a strong democracy when all of our constituents in both parties are empowering and building up civic participation. If we do not move right now to make this change as an island, technically one party could move towards 17-year-old primary and caucus voting without legislative action, since state parties have broad authority over nominating contests. Or individuals who would otherwise be covered by this policy might request to allow 17-year-old primary voting by asserting their First Amendment freedom of association rights. But as a body, we can bring resolution on this important issue today. Thank you to the committee chair and my colleagues from the committee that expedited a hearing on this bill and helped move it to this body. I am happy to report that we have included provisions on the final bill before you that covers the discussions and concerns that were raised during the public hearing, specifically from the Guam Election Commission. With my colleagues' advice and counsel, this bill is improved and provides a requested legislative clarity from our Guam Election Commission. I would like to commend, once again, my colleague from the village of Santa Rita for leading the bill with Bill 2433, now Public Law 3312, which now allows pre-registration of youths who are at least 16 years of age for upcoming elections. This Bill 279-33, if passed, would complement my colleague's public law by allowing young adults to exercise their right to vote in a primary if they turn 18 years old by the general election date. And I once again would like to ask my colleagues to support 27933, and I welcome all the positive comments that each one would like to give relative to the Bill 27933. Comments that will strengthen Bill 27933. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Any senator wish to be heard on the bill? Senator Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that anytime somebody rises up with the recommendation that we offer something positive, that it's incumbent on us to follow that call. But I rise in full support of this bill, 279-33. And I think what it does, in addition to allowing those people within a small window of eligibility, at present the statute and the exercise by the Guam Election Commission is that they determine the date of the general election as the date of eligibility. In other words, you have to have turned 18 by the general election presently. But what this does is it allows those people who in doing that, it preempted anyone from those small categories from voting in the primary. But what this bill does, I think it follows the effect that the other prior legislations had, and that was getting people excited about voting, getting young people interested in coming out to vote. And I think that as lawmakers, if we have that opportunity to inspire somebody or give somebody some incentive to take the cause up and register to vote and exercise their voices, then we've done a good job. And I once had some reservations about eligibility, but you know, when somebody is so shy of turning 18, rather than have them wait out a whole 2 years, when they're so shy of that 18th birthday, I don't see the harm now in letting them go. And that was my initial reservation, but it actually is a good thing, and it's a good consideration. So I want to commend the author of this bill for providing yet one more incentive for somebody to come out and register to vote and actually exercise their vote in the upcoming election. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Torres. Senator Spicio?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to provide some very positive comments with respect to Bill 279-33, and not only to recognize the sponsor, Senator Underwood, for this bill, which seeks to follow through on some of the court cases that we've seen happening throughout the nation, that provides for this kind of opportunity for those 17-year-olds who would be 18 by the time of the general election to participate in either a primary election or to participate in their party's caucuses. And so this leaves that opportunity for them. But I also rise to give special recognition to Senator Torres, our good colleague from Santa Rita, who was very gracious and allowed for several clarifications to be made along with the bill that the sponsor agreed to recognize the concerns that the Guam Election Commission had with respect to a prior law that we passed, which truly revamped our entire election laws here on the island. I also rise to recognize Maria Pangilinan, the Executive Director, the staff of the Guam Election Commission, the board, also their legal counsels for really working diligently to recognize all the election laws and how all those anomalies made it so that there was a dark cloud over the election processes in past years. But since then, they've really worked hard to ensure that every vote that's going to be cast would be properly accounted for, not only those votes, but those ballot stocks as well, and also in how these voters are to be identified to determine their eligibility. So this is really a great bill. It's a great step forward. And the fact that we've been meeting, as the sponsor pointed out, regularly with not only Senator Torres, but also the Guam Election Commission Executive Director. We've been meeting over the last several weeks, and more so yesterday. Up until yesterday, Mr. Speaker, we met to make sure that all of those concerns were ironed out, so that when the bill actually came to the floor, the only thing left to do was to speak positively about the bill, because all those other concerns have been ironed out. So thank you for allowing me to lend my voice to provide these very positive comments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Senator Blas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, in keeping with the desire of the author of the legislation, for positive comments and ways to make the bill better, I'll keep within it. And, let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, I'm in full support of this legislation. I want to congratulate and I want to thank the author of this legislation. I truly appreciate it. And I hope that this body unanimously supports it. And I say that with all sincerity. Because, Mr. Speaker, what this provides is this body's now recognition that a 17 and an 18-year-old can make positive and good decisions in their lives. So I'm in full support of that. Thank you for the acknowledgement and the encouragement for that. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to keep it a positive thing. And with all sincerity, that said, I believe they have that ability. They do know it. And I'm glad that this body is going to take the position, the stance, to recognize that they have that ability to make those kind of choices in their lives. Thank you very much.
Yes, Papa Frank. Yeah, Youth for Youth. Senator Espaldon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I make a comment, I'm going to ask you as the Speaker to perhaps make a ruling on Section 5 and on Section 6. These additions to the bill were made and were not part of the original bill, and whether they're pertinent to the issue of that really this bill addresses, whether 17-year-olds can vote in a primary election, whether this is even germane to this bill without a public hearing. Section 5 and Section 6, page 6 and page 7. This was not on the original bill, was not part of the public hearing process, and to add it now, just the question is this germane to this whole initiative of allowing 17-year-olds to vote in a primary election?
Point of information, Mr. Speaker?
Point of information, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
as you're thinking about that ruling, I want to put your mind in the context of what the sponsor presented, that there's, over the last several weeks and the last few months, the Guam Election Commission, they've been combing through the rules and regs that they had this legislature adopt and determined that there's some areas of the existing statute that requires some clarification. And so we talked about those extensively at the public hearing, and since the bill deals with clarifying the election law, and as we pointed out, there's nothing in these amendments that will change the intent of the law. For example, on page 6, if you look at preceding fiscal, changing preceding to prior year, I mean, these are the things that the Election Commission has asked for to make them comfortable with moving forward. And as chairman of oversight over the Election Commission, I certainly entertained it at the public hearing, and I've entertained it through the committee process, and it was my encouragement that the sponsor really look into the possibility of incorporating these amendments to the bill. And so with respect to the issue of germaneness, it all deals with the election law, and it all seeks to clarify the election law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It's a broad scope.
While the chair appreciates the fact that it's all election law, the chair will rule that, beginning with Section 5, those provisions are not germane to the bill. My ruling can be challenged and overruled.
we going to make it a practice that when a committee substitutes a bill, if that substitute language is not part of the original bill, that it will not be entertained on the floor? Because I've been very accommodating, Mr. Speaker, and if it's been the desire of the committee, and I thought the general belief is that if it's discussed at a public hearing and it has some connection to the main intent of the bill, which is to clarify the election law, I thought we've been giving that kind of latitude. And if we're going to take a hard line, then let's take that hard line now. And then you will not see bills substituted or reported out of committee that has one single word beyond what that original bill was. So that's what we're going to do.
I understand, and I'm just saying, there can be a completely separate bill for this one, since it's completely the issue is completely separate. They're both election, but one to have a clarification of all of the provisions that need to be clarified. The advice that I've been given is that it is not germane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just wanted clarification and the ruling from the chair. I wasn't going to argue it one way or the other. It's just that it seems to be your ruling is what I was expecting it to be. That being said, Mr. Speaker, I guess my input now then. Well, I guess the question that needs to be is, do I need to move to strike these sections? Or the ruling or your ruling will in effect do that?
My ruling has struck them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to go on, again, I understand and I appreciate the intent of this bill. I guess my issue is that we are, as the previous speaker kind of mentioned, he's all for it because this basically makes a statement that 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds now have the ability to make wise decisions. And the comment I have is that I guess it doesn't conform to really what legislations we have recently passed over the past few terms, in which we have not allowed 18-year-olds the ability to buy alcohol. Right, we've moved it from 18 to 21, and again, it may have been the wisest decision, a very wise decision. Don't know that yet. We also take a look at the ability to perhaps buy other products out there that we may deem harmful to health, and we have deemed that 18-year-olds or nobody under 18-year-olds is able to make that decision for themselves, and that's why we've set limits now, whereas I think it's 18 or 21, I'm not really sure. But I just want to make that comment that because in our overall approach to policy and how we deal with this age group, we're allowing them to do some things, and I believe that the right to vote is a very serious matter, and their ability to make distinctions on what is fact and what are real issues and what are the real approaches to solving some of the problems that we have on this island versus their ability to make decisions on their own behalf just seem inconsistent. And I just want to bring that as a point to this body that going forward, if we do pass this bill, right, that we should probably take into consideration going forth all other bills in which we limit the abilities of 17 and 18-year-olds and maybe 19 and 20-year-olds to make certain decisions for themselves. Because in this instance, we're going to say, okay, at 17, going on 18, you're allowed to make a decision that really will elect the leadership and the people who you deem very important to steer this island on a course that is most appropriate and beneficial for the long term of this island. But we are not, but like I said, in contrast, you don't have that ability yet to make any good decisions on your behalf when it comes to harmful products of which you can use, of which those 21 and over now have the ability to make a decision on their behalf. So it's just a point I want to make. The other point that I want to make is that, there is, the primary elections are a party election. They're for the parties really to elect who is going to represent the party in the general election, to me is like really the real focus, I believe, should be if we're going to allow them to vote at, if we're going to have the cutoff date that they're going to be 18 by the time the general election rolls around, then they have that ability to make a choice between the various candidates representing the two parties. In this case, this is more of a party election when you're talking about primaries. And there is a law in place already that allows not for 17-year-olds to vote, but for 16-year-olds, first of all, to register and then to be able to vote in the general election if they're going to turn 18 by the time the general election rolls around. So, again, I just want to note that because of those things that stick out of my mind. I'm not sure how we'll vote on this, but, again, just wanted to state that for the record. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Again, before I move on, the ruling of the chair is still before the body, and if there is going to be a motion to overrule the chair will entertain it at this time. Senator Tony Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand in full support of Bill 279-33. Immediately following the public hearing, I did have some issues and concerns with it. However, the author of the bill was very open and receptive to my concerns. And not only with the concerns that I had on several of the language of the bill, but also with the Guam Election Commission. That when they came down to publicly testify, and they were talking about additional funds that probably would needed. And I brought that up to the author, and we did discuss it. And immediately, she turned around and she called the Election Commission to have a meeting with them, and to come to the conclusion that no additional funds would be needed. So, in light of those positive changes to the bill, and also to the fact that the Election Commission stated they would not need any additional funding, I felt that it would be proper and to fully support this bill. And I thank the author for moving forward with this, and also for her forward thinking in ensuring that all those that who would like to come out to vote will come out to vote, and now those young adults who want to exercise their rights will have that opportunity to do so in this upcoming election. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any other senator wish to be heard on the bill? Any other senator wish to be heard on the bill? If not, I just will take a short recess. The speaker is going to return to her seat. Okay. Well, I'll just take a break, and you can move them. You count.
No, there was no threat.
Legislation's back on the record. Senator Espadon, I understand you wish to be recognized.
Mr. Speaker, previously I had asked you to make a ruling on Section 5 and Section 6, and after discussing that issue with the colleagues on the floor, as well as trying to understand what this does, what those two sections do, really it's more of a housekeeping sections that would assist the Guam Election Commission as we go towards the upcoming election. So at this time, Mr. Speaker, I would like to withdraw my request that I made to you for a ruling on those two issues.
On the motion to withdraw, any objection? No. Hearing none. On the motion, do you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In closing, let's just imagine that we are 17 years old, and we keep hearing from older brothers and sisters and parents and grandparents about the issues of the day. Let's imagine that we see a candidate at the mall or at a social event. Let's imagine that we are really upset about the cancer death of a loved one, or even the rhino beetles that have attacked our trees along the road. Imagine that we are concerned about the quality of our science lab. Well, with the passage of Bill 279-33, we can now approach the candidates and tell them what we think and how we feel, and we would be empowered and engaged. You can imagine the difference you will make once you realize that you can affect your future and theirs. It's more than imagining now, Mr. Speaker. Today, we can make it a reality with this important bill. That is the power of democracy, and that is the miracle of waking to the spirit up in our young people. To the young people who testified in support of this bill, and hopefully the hundreds of thousands of young adults who this year and in the years to come will testify to their concern and passion for our island home by registering and casting their vote. I thank you and hope that this body will stand with us in our desire to participate in our democracy. Mr. Speaker, the development of this bill was not done by myself alone, and I would like to make a motion to include or to add as co-sponsors Senator Rory Respicio, Senator Tony Ada, and Senator Mary Camacho Torres. And I'd like to make that motion right now, Mr. Speaker.
Any objection? Your nephew's looking.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleagues for their very positive and strong support for Bill 279-33.
On the motion to place Bill.
Go ahead, just do it from the, still standing up, still in play.
I'm sorry. Mr. Speaker?
You're recognized.
Yes, I'm sorry. I have to amend my motion. May I?
You may.
Yes. I also would like to add Senator Frank Blas as a co-sponsor.
Hearing no objection.
Okay. Thank you.
On the motion to send the bill down, any objection?
So I got myself on after Frank Blas. We can do this now. Are we coming back tomorrow? No. No.
Give him a copy. Mr. Vice Speaker, on Resolution 299-33.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to move that Resolution 299-33 be placed on the third reading file, and ask if I can speak.
You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for your allowing me to speak at this late hour. Resolution 299 was introduced to support a House resolution introduced by Congresswoman Berdalio at my behest, and that is to make sure that the let me see if I get that law right. The National Community Service Improvement Act of 2015 be passed to allow COFA citizens, Compact Free Association citizens who are in the territories and the states, to participate in the service and programs that are before the AmeriCorps and other corps that they have, the volunteers. I do this, Madam Speaker, because I know many of you remember from last year when the ruling came down from National AmeriCorps that disqualified or COFA citizens, and a number of students, I think it was 40, were disqualified from receiving assistance to finish off their school year and to even finish the programs that they were in. The irony was that a number of those people were actually, one who was working at the court was a Marine veteran who had served in combat. And the irony of being able to serve in combat but not being able to serve as a volunteer was, an irony that I could not understand at all. And the other thing, Madam Speaker, was that all the rest of the people that were on the AmeriCorps program that were assisting were absolutely brilliant models that young people could look up to. They were teachers' aides at the GACS Academy. They were workers up at Sanctuary that were assisting with at-risk youth. There were other young people that were working at the court and the Justice Corps, working with at-risk youth. And if we cannot and do not support having individuals from the community that really needs to have role models, ideal role models, be the ones that are out there and assisting in trying to get people to not only vote, but to be good students and be good citizens. And so I ask my colleagues to please unanimously support this resolution so that Congresswoman Berdalio can be able to move her bill through to amend the National Community Service Act. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm cutting it short because I know we have to go.
You're welcome, Mr. Vice Speaker. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the resolution? There being none, so on the motion to send Resolution 299 to a third reading file without any objection? Okay, thank you, Senators. Senator, we're pulling back a bill that was set aside, Bill 160-33. I know we had stopped with an amendment, I think, with Senator Respicio at the time, so.
Yeah, thank
Senator,
you,
you're
Madam
recognized.
Speaker. And I will follow in the Vice Speaker's footsteps and be extremely brief. I've been working with the sponsor of this bill, and there's 5 amendments that have been written out, and they all contain Brant T. McCready as the senator proposing the amendment, but I'll go ahead and move those amendments on our behalf. The first amendment is on page 1, line 8, to delete the words powers and. And so then you would get a general idea already of where this bill is headed by deleting those 2 words. So that's the First Amendment. So it's just council duties.
Okay, one moment until, can somebody please get my copy of the bill that's on my desk? Because I don't have it here and I won't be able to follow with you. Bill number 160. Okay. So, okay, Senator, so the amendment, oh, it's not. It's as substituted by the committee. It's not the one, right?
If this amendment carries, Madam Speaker, on page 2, line 12 will be a technical amendment.
Wait, so one moment first. On the very first one, which is page 1, line 8 of the bill, is to delete the word powers and just make it council duties.
Correct.
Okay. Anyone on the like to speak on the amendment?
Yeah.
So ordered.
And then the next amendment on page 2, line 12 would be a technical amendment, so it'll read council duties, and also on line 13 to take out the powers, and so it just be the duties of the council shall include.
Okay, so page 2, line 18.
No, line
That's-
12.
Wait, let me find, I don't think I have that.
No, that amendment is not in writing. It's I
Say that
I didn't want to
again.
presume that it was going to pass, so since that passes, page 2, line 12,
Page 2,
and line 13 will
12.
now be a technical amendment.
Okay, so the technical amendment then is exactly the same thing
Yeah.
to make it council duties?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, no objections, ordered.
My next amendment is on line 18, page 2 of the bill. There was some discussion yesterday about could this council really impose and issue permit requirements, and even in consultation with the author of the bill, he also recognizes that that's really not where we want to go at this time with this council. So to take out the words impose and issue and establish, so it'll read to develop and establish permit requirements and schedule of fees in connection therewith relative to the conduct of fishing vessels, operations and harvesting, and the harvesting of fish and other marine life in the waters of Guam.
Okay, well, see, and I was going to get back to that as a matter of fact. So really before this, then, can we just have you withdraw your amendment that you had yesterday, which was fishing vessels? Do you remember when you did that? And we
Yeah.
didn't really take action on it?
So I would draw that amendment, and then recognizing that that amendment is incorporated into this amendment.
Oh, okay then,
Yeah.
so, you're right, so, you're
thank
right.
you.
So then it will be further amended then, I guess. Okay, just want to make sure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, you're welcome. So then on the amendment, any objections? So ordered.
And then just to clarify, there was a new section A, which dealt with indigenous fishing rights, which was adopted yesterday. So I'm not
Yes.
moving that because.
We have that.
So the third amendment is on, following along is on line 11, page 3 of the bill, to again delete the words assume certain duties, powers, and responsibilities vested in. And so it's going to be replaced with provide guidance to and assist the Department of Agriculture.
And on the amendment, no objections? So ordered.
And in line with some of the concerns raised, that since we've added a new duty for them to coordinate the indigenous fishing rights, then we should also recognize that the council makeup needs to reflect individuals to represent Chamorro grassroots organizations. So this next amendment would change the council members that the governor has to appoint to 8, and to make, instead of 3 from the community, to this time make it 4 from the community, appointed to represent the community at large, and 2 individuals of which shall be appointed to represent Chamorro grassroots organizations. And then also in that amendment, we want to empower the Director of Agriculture. So the amendment is, instead of making him an ex officio without voting rights, to make him a full voting member, and he shall participate fully in council meetings. And then it changes from 7 to 8 to be consistent with this amendment. And so this has been,
So you're not going to have an odd number?
yes, it becomes an odd number because 8 voting members appointed by the governor, and then the directors has a full vote, so it'd be 9 members of the council.
Okay, so the director
Yeah.
makes the 9th
Yeah,
then now
correct.
as a voting member. Does everybody understand that then and see that? Okay, thank you, Senator. We'll just take the whole amendments because they're all interrelated. So any objection to the amendment which are in several lines of page 4. No objection? No objection, so ordered.
Thank you. And
Senator.
our next amendment deals with the discussions on permits and fee schedules. And so instead of making this council establish the fee schedule, it will assume that if this thing became law and they established the fee schedule, that would be established without having to go through the AAA process. So this amendment makes it so that they propose a schedule of various permits and they recommend fees, again recognizing for fishing vessels. And it says that if such schedules, if approved by the council, shall also be subject to the AAA, and that from time to time they can recommend under this section any additional fees or which should be adjusted upward or downward, but then those recommendations would also be subject to the AAA process, so there would not be any automatic adoption. And so that was not the sponsor's intent anyway, and so this amendment clarifies that.
Okay, on the amendment? No objections, anyone? Okay, so ordered.
Okay, and then the last amendment, Madam Speaker and colleagues, is to, on page 10 of, line 10 of page 10 of the bill.
Okay, wait, I don't have that. I don't have that amendment.
Yeah, the last amendment that, did you make copies? Anyway, if you could just go to, it's just one, it's just changing the date so it gives more time.
Okay.
So instead of June 1st, 2016, it's April 1st, 2017.
Okay. On the amendment? On the dates? Okay. So ordered.
And finally, Madam Speaker, in case you and our colleagues are wondering, the sponsor has worked closely with Mr. I can say, well, Manny Duenas, who welcomes these amendments and believes that this is a great step forward. So thank you for letting me move these amendments on behalf of Senator McCready and myself.
You're welcome, Senator. So on then either back to the main motion, is there anybody else who would like to speak? Anyone who would like to speak on the main motion of Bill 160? There being none, then with the primary sponsor, then Senator McCready, would you like to close?
Real quickly, I know we're running short on time. I'd like to make a motion to add Senator Respicio as a co-sponsor.
Okay, on that motion and to add Senator Respicio, no objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And finally, I think this is a very good day for not just the indigenous fishermen and the indigenous fishing community on Guam, but the entire fishing community. It's been a very good day. I just got off the phone with Manny Duenas about a half an hour ago, and he said if this was to become law, that this would be the first fisheries commission locally in the entire United States. And I think that's a big accomplishment for us. So I thank the entire body for all of their input. I said I would also add Senator Frank Blas, because he didn't say anything, but he really kind of helped us lead behind the scenes, and he was there behind the scenes. So I would like to add him as well. So thank you very much.
Okay, so on the motion to add also Frank Blas Jr., so ordered. So on the motion, one more time, hearing no objection to send 160 to the third reading file without any objection. Senators, you're not listening. You know, I could easily make a motion to set it aside again. So that's why you need to listen to make sure. So on the motion then to send 160 to the third reading file without any objection, so ordered. Okay, Senators, as you all know, the governor will be giving his address. And it will be at the front entrance of the Guam Museum. And the attire is island, formal island, guys, island, not coat and tie. So we will recess until Saturday to vote at 3 p.m. 4 p.m.? 4 p.m. Saturday. Sabalu. So we are on recess. Yes.